It's in 2 Corinthians chapter 10. It's only a couple of verses, but it's 2 Corinthians 10. The Corinthians broke Paul's heart. He's the fellow that founded the Corinthian church. Acts 18 tells you the story about him founding the church. It broke his heart. You can hear it as you read 1 Corinthians. You can hear it even more when you read 2 Corinthians. They're always digging at him and gutting him and all of the rest of it. I'm jumping into the middle of a section. But that's who he's writing to. They're saying things like this. You see, when he's away from us, he writes these tough letters. But you see, when he's with us, he's all sweetness and light. That's the kind of character he is. And he has to defend himself all the time. This little text, that's only the background, the text I'm interested in. Listen to this in 2 Corinthians 10. He said, though we walk in the flesh, the word flesh is used in many kinds of ways, and one of them is, it stands for wickedness. That's not what he has in mind here. He says, though we live in the flesh, though we are humans, he says, we don't war the way humans war. We don't war after the flesh. He says, for the weapons of our warfare. It's important for us. You know this is right. I'm only telling you what you already know, but that's okay. You'll be patient with me. It's not only what the person means that's important, though that's the fundamentally important thing. It's important too the way he says it. Here's what he says. We make war. He said we walk in the flesh, but we don't have the weapons that humans use. No bazookas, no chariots or spears, no nuclear weapons, nothing like that. And in the world, all kinds of garbage is poured out, lies and conniving and manipulating and all of that. He said that's not the kind of world we live in. It's not how we operate. Even when we're wrong, we're sorry about it, we're repentant of it, and we determine to do what is Christ imaging. He knows he's a flawed person, and he knows that we're flawed persons. He sets that aside. He speaks enough about that, and we hear enough about it. Yeah? He says we're at war. We walk in the flesh, but we don't make war the way humans do. He said, for though we walk in the flesh, we don't war according to the flesh. For the weapons of our warfare are not fleshly, but mighty in God for the pulling down of fortresses, casting down arguments and every high thing that exalts itself against the knowledge of God. We bring every thought into captivity to the obedience of Christ. When you read a text like that, what is it that you see? Not what does it mean or how do you understand the wording and where he's going? What is it you see? You see fortresses. You see castles. You see these big buildings where all the tyrants live, and out of which they ride and they rape and plunder and cheat and starve a world. He said, you see those castles, those fortresses? You know what we do? We tear them down. We obliterate them. We ruin them. And you see all the plans and all the schemes that they have? We make them all prisoners. We chain them all up and we bring them in front of Christ and get them, and they all bow down in the front of Christ. That's the imagery. The truth is, carried with the imagery, we speak gospel. We do what is right as God enables us. Wherever we go, we speak against error. We say, that's a lie. That's a lie. That's a manipulation. It's what we do. We sing it, he says. We teach it. As best as God enables us, we act it out. It's who we are. We're human people with all the limitations of human, but we've got a message. We've got this. But he doesn't say we've got a message and we teach and all of that. He says we come like a big horde up against this big tyrannous castle. And we obliterate it, tear down the walls, rip out the gates, and all of the tyranny in there and all the thoughts. We chain it all up, drag it behind us, bring it in front of Christ, and it all gets down and bows in front of him. The imagery is important. And Eliza Doolittle, he falls Freddie Ensign Hill. He's now mad about her. You'll find him every morning standing on the street corner. This is what he sings. He's on the street corner. You're supposed to see this, and I'm supposed to see it. He's standing on the street corner. I've often walked down this street before, he said. And the pavement always stands beneath my feet before. But all at once I find myself several stories high. Why is that? Because I'm on the street where you live. If somebody had walked up and said to the songwriter, that's all nonsense, that's all just imagery, he would say, well, of course it's just imagery. What, did you think I meant it literally? It's the imagery that carries the truth about how Freddie feels about Eliza. Yes, but it's only a dumb old song. There are no dumb old songs that carry loveliness and beauty and kindness and nobility and bravery and all that. There are no dumb songs that are written like that. In the book of Revelation, chapter 21, and I saw a new heavens and a new earth. For the first heavens and the first earth have passed away, and there's no more sea. And I saw the new Jerusalem coming down out of heaven, dressed up like a bride adorned for her husband. Well, that's all nonsense. And the walls of the city he shows, he said, come here, come here. The angel says to John, let me show you the bride, the wife of the Lamb. That's what he's going to show him. That's what he says in Revelation 21 and 22. So what does he do? He brings John up into a high mountain. And what do they look at? They look at a city, 4 square. He said, I'm going to show you the bride, the wife of the Lamb. He shows him a city. What kind of city? The walls are 1,400 miles high. The thing's a square. And its walls are 1,400 miles high. It's only imagery. If somebody come up and said to you, see, all of that was nonsense, there was no such city, you would say, of course, he's not describing a literal city, but the truth that the imagery carries is what we get under the picture. How would you describe the marvelous city that speaks of the triumphant church over all the world? He said it's 1,400 miles. You can't get in there with a chariot. You couldn't knock that down with one of those battering rams. The gates, they are 1,400 miles high. Big old pearl is a gate. You can't get in there. You can't beat the church. It's unbeatable. It's beautiful. God's dead center in it. All of that is in Revelation 21 and 22. But it's only imagery. It's only imagery, we say. And Paul, here, imagery. Do you know what has happened? A big part of what has happened. We've sucked the adventure and the romance out of life. Of life. I have an acquaintance, a great, great, great man who has given his service to Christ all these years of his adulthood, away from home, in Europe. He doesn't have a romantic corpuscle in him. He doesn't have a poetic bone in him. So when I sent him a piece and told him that Jesus and Don Quixote were just like one another, he said, don't you dare. Don Quixote was a lunatic and Jesus was no lunatic. He didn't have any poetry in him. The images of scripture are all over the place. Paul in Ephesians chapter 6, 10 and following, but particularly 13 and following, he said, okay, get the armor on. And so we get the breastplate of righteousness, the shield of faith. We've got our feet shod with this, that, and the other. We'll put the helmet and all on to make war against. It's all imagery. You know where he got that? You know where he got that armor? He got it from Isaiah 59. And you know who wore it in Isaiah 59? God. God wore that armor. The armor of Ephesians 6 is not just for your protection and mine, though it is that. God put the armor on because Isaiah 59 says he looked and saw his people being battered and bludgeoned and all the rest of it. And he wondered, says the text, he wondered there was no one to help. So he got up himself and put on the armor and he went to do the job. So the armor in Ephesians 6 is not just for you and me and self-protection. And it is for that. But it's for the world, is what he said in the prayer concerning the supper. We're not only suffering for ourselves and for one another, we're suffering for the world. We're keeping the story alive. All of that is going on. Well, there are not many people around here saying it. It doesn't make any difference. It keeps the story alive. And all of this, we need to see adventure in life. We need to have a vision of what is exactly going on. It's true. It's true. Life is too this, that, and the other. After a while, the images fade, and we go back to the prosaic. You can't keep looking at your wife or your husband or your children or your parents or your friends and thinking, wow, what people they are. You can't do that. We're not able to do that. But it's nevertheless true, even though we can't see it. And Don Quixote is one guy who teaches that. Picasso, you know, Picasso draws this marvelous picture called Crucifixion. And in it, you have to get help to work it out. But it's a terrific, Google it sometime. And he has Don Quixote, a wee tiny figure, way down at the bottom, as you look at it on the left, and his lance is pointing up to the crucified Christ. That guy, Picasso, for all of his flaws, whatever else he was flawed in, he saw what a lot of preachers cannot and do not see. There is romance in the world, for dear sake. You've seen the old movies, the Black Shield of Falworth. You know what they did back in those days as the Knight Hurley and Tennyson and all that telephone. Here are these bad eggs up there. They're going to do what they're going to do. And in comes the hero. And what you did was you went up, you hit your lance against the guy you wanted to take on. And the Black Shield of Falworth guy, he comes up and he hits it, and I want you. And then they do their job. Jesus, the young knight, the ever young knight, come into our world. And here they were, all four of them. The world, the flesh, the devil, and death. And he rode up, hit his lance against 1, 2, 3, 4, and said, you, I want. That's what we sing. It's what we pray. It's what we preach if we know what we're doing. It's what we read. It's what these people say. It turns your wife, it turns your fathers and mothers, turns your husbands, turns your children into something bigger, more glorious. The vision is there. Don Quixote, on the night in which he's doing vigil, he's going to get knighted, he thinks, tomorrow by the owner of the inn. And he said about himself, he said, call nothing thine except your soul. Love not what you are, but what you may become. Pursue not pleasure. You may have the misfortune of overtaking it. Be just to all men. Be courteous to all women. Live in the vision of the one for whom all glorious deeds are done. Dulcinea. Okay, he's a lunatic. But you know, it's the lunatic who becomes the one that readers to this very day watch movies and read the literature and read the stuff about him. He's the fella we all want to be like. And she says to him, why are you calling me that? My name is Aldonza. He said, oh, no, I know you. She says, you don't know me. He said, oh, I have sought you. I have dreamed you. I have had you in my heart. And he feels that way about her because he sees every woman who is not acting under the wicked spell. He sees them all and he sees them gloriously. And I'm telling you that Don Quixote would say that about your wife, your mother, your sister, your daughter. He would say that about every man who is not under the spell and acting wickedly. He'd say that about your husband. He'd say that about your father. Okay, if they're under the spell, he knows the difference. And that's why he battles with them. He gets it. He's not as lunatic as he lets himself on to be. There needs to be a vision of who the church of God is. You need to see who you are. Well, it's very romantic and very adventurous. And your house is all the same. And now you're going to get up and you're going to make dinner. And okay. So the images, they kind of go away. But once they get down inside, once you spend time thinking that stuff, reading that in the light of the young knight who saw us in trouble that no one else could take care of, trouble with things within us that we detested and hated and all of that, about people who are leading us that way. And George Eliot, her name is Mariana. Changed it a time or two. It was Mariana Evans. She was a part of a religious home. And with help, she lost her way. A.M. Fairbairn said of her, she didn't stop believing it. She just stopped loving it. There's so much boredom, so much lack of romance involved, so much lack of adventure. Dear God, do you know who you are? Ugh, that's what he would say when he walked into your room. Have you any idea who you are? And you would say, well, I'm really nobody. Don't say that to me. I know better than you who you are. Have you any idea how successful you've been in the war in all these years? Were all the things that were coming against you, a lot of things that you knew, a lot of things that you didn't know, that I was taking care of, and I was stepping in between you and it and them. Have you any idea what power you've been exerting just by being you. Well, I never do much. I don't. Yeah, do you believe in me? Does everybody know me? Yeah, well, they do. Yeah, that's power. That's power. Adventure, the boredom that, that religion can get to be. This is my conviction, one fellow's conviction. The bulk of our young people are going away, not because they have stopped believing the truth, but because they've stopped loving it. The church should get help. The church, and God's offering it, you understand. But there are those of us who get in this way, and I'm talking about people like myself who get the chance to teach and preach and write and do all of that kind of stuff, and it all becomes the same old deal. There's nothing same about it. This young Lord of ours, who never gets old, who always thinks, here's the day, another one, and he has another day after it. And he called you for that. And you have been doing it. Some of you, it's close time for people like you and me. We're ready to get headed out of here. But all the years down, we've been crawling in our own way, faithfully, to the degree that is in us to do it. And one of these days, when we think, well, that was a pretty poor life I lived there. There wasn't a lot in it. And then, I don't know about this, of course, but I like to imagine. And, you go into the other side, there's a big, you get your private screen, and it shows you your life, and it sanitizes it, of course. It keeps all the bad stuff out, but it shows you all the things you did were marvelous. You didn't think a whole lot of them, but you know what you did there? You just said the girl's life there. Did I? And you watch the whole thing and you thank God for every minute of it. And faithfulness at a job, faithfulness of giving to the degree that you're able. All the skill that he has given you, all the brightness, all the joy, all the romance, the feelings, the energy that feelings generate. This is our life, for pity's sake. It's not this having a cowl over your head, and I'm not wanting to be rude about anybody. I'm just talking. When you got your hand together and you're walking around and chanting this, all of that. That isn't what he's called you to. It's not even what you're doing. Because if you're remaining faithful with Jesus Christ, he's seeing it one way, and you may be tempted to see it another way. I don't care if you're on your own. I don't care if it's 1 or 2 or 5 or 10. Don't care if there's thousands. The same adventure is going on. Oh, dear God, this is a great life that you and I have been brought in. Oh, but you've got to be realistic. Be real. Yeah, that's what they said to Jesus all the time. You've got to be realistic. This guy's stinking rotten in the tomb. Oh, is he? And Christ said, hey, Lazarus, out he comes. They always said to him, you can't change the facts. And he said, yeah, I know. And he goes around changing them all over the place. Look what he did to you. Never stuck your arm up your back and made you hurt and say, confess me, and obey me. Not a bit of it. How did he get you? How did he bring you? Why do you smile at all this stuff? Why do you enjoy this? Why do you assume? Why do you think, oh, here comes Sunday morning? Well, there are no Sundays anymore. Lord's Day, that was a mistake I said there. Okay, here comes Sunday, here comes Lord's Day morning. We're going to assume, And then he sings for us. Truth about the number one human being. The exalted and glorified Jesus of Nazareth. He said, I'm here, okay? You coming? And we're coming. Help us. Help one another. So speak. God help us. Yeah, you help us to destroy the gloom to the degree that the gloom can be taken away. Give us some romance, for pity's sake. Let's get up in the morning, lances all ready, walk out and bang it on some shield something. Down you go, you rascal. That's who you are. That's who Paul is in 2 Corinthians 10. How does he tear down fortresses of tyranny and wickedness and lies and brutality, heartlessness? He speaks. Hey, he speaks. No, I won't do that. No. Oh yes, I want to do that. Crown me in. That's what he does. That's what you do. Well, I don't do a whole lot of things right now. That's okay. I read about an older lady, really older, and she just sitting there, and the guy said, well, what do you do all day? She said, well, I sing until my throat gets turned, and then I read until my eyes get tired, and I just sit there and let God love me. Yeah, so is that who you are? It's getting where I am, but it's great. Help me to be romantic in the best sense of that word. Help me to have a vision of things bigger and lovelier. Talk about it in imagery. Make up your own imagery. John does it in Revelation 21. Paul does it in 2 Corinthians 10. He does it all over the place. Paul. And Peter does the same thing. He closes the building with stones and all. Make up your own image. Make a lovely image that honors God and honors you. That's the people. And I'm tired shouting like this, but I can't help it. There's nothing I can do about it. And I'm done. Would you pray? Maybe pray together, please. Father, at times, if we're feeling a bit gloomier, and then it's too ordinary, and the same old story and all of that. And then we look at one another, and we like one another, and we're committed and that to one another, but we don't see one another often enough beyond the physical and beyond the social things that we do. And the social things we must do. All the dishwashing and this, that, and the other, and going to the same job every morning and coming back to the same house and all of that. Life can do that. You know that. That's why you listed it as a threat in Romans chapter 8. Would you give us men and women who can make us visionary? Let romance and adventure and the conviction that we are an assault force against all the fortresses of the world. And even when the imagery doesn't come to pass, the truth that the imagery carries, we'll say to you, count us in. Yeah, we want you to count us in. Yeah, and so we're thankful to everyone shown here, everyone who was able to show up and that, and all of those who have given their lives to you wherever they live and anything else, all of that. Let the Church of God be unbeatable, unstoppable. Church of God, live with joy and adventure, filled with emotional energy, based on the truth that we know is true, and literally, historically true. Well, thank you for everything now, and in that day we'll thank you back.